You were talking about the word oligopoly. Certainly, most people are familiar with monopoly, not the game, but the concept where one company or entity controls a market. What is an oligopoly, and what is the reality of the telecom space in Canada?
Right. It's a great question. So an oligopoly is, a system in which a few companies, so not only one, but a few companies control almost all of the goods and services within a market. So in this case, Bell, Telus, and Rogers control almost our entire telecommunications infrastructure. And our system has created the illusion of choice. So we have what we call flanker brands like, Fido or Kudo, and those are companies that are subsidies of Rogers, Bell, or Telus that operate to create the illusion of choice. So we have, people say, well, I have lots of providers to choose from. There's many. But the reality is that they're all controlled by one of these big three companies.
And so, I mean, in a normal marketplace, I think for most other goods, when something like this would happen, consumers would have the option of protesting with their wallet and taking their business elsewhere. As you noted, there is not a lot of competition in the space. What are some of the factors as to why our market is so consolidated? Is it government protection? What is it? What is the root cause here in terms of why the competition in the space is so limited?
It's important to highlight that it's not one single government decision that has led us to this point, but rather a series of decisions from a series of government agencies that have led to a market that is less competitive, less innovative, and more expensive. So we're really at a point where we are the result of years of decisions that have led us to, having little to no competition or option.
I mean, I'm dating myself a little bit. If I go back to the Harper years, I remember there was a lot of um criticism and media attention about the prospect of U.S. carriers attempting to come to Canada. What is stopping a U.S. carrier or any international carrier from entering the space?
It's a great question. It's a question, we've been answering a lot lately. So the reason why providers in other countries, specifically when it comes to cell phone providers, so your cell phone plans, the reason why other companies or other countries have much lower cost options than we do, Canada pays some of the highest prices in the world for internet and cell phone, is because they have something called mobile virtual network operators. And that means that, let's say, a company like AT&T or Verizon would rent out effectively their infrastructure for a smaller company at a cost. And then that smaller organization would use the infrastructure to provide a service. So we don't have that in Canada. So if a smaller entity wants to come into our market, they have to build their own physical infrastructure in order to do so, which is hugely expensive. And there's a lot of barriers to doing so. So this is how Rogers, Bell, and Telus are able to maintain control over our market because they own all of the physical infrastructure needed to do so.
And so it's an infrastructure question. If a company were to want to come to Canada and build their own infrastructure, is it just a cost barrier, or is there also a regulatory barrier that prevents them from doing so? Like, are U.S. providers ready and willing to come to Canada and build their infrastructure accordingly, or is that cost of operating in Canada make it economically unviable?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for a lot of smaller providers, we've seen lots of interest from independent service providers in the United States and in other parts of the world who are keen to come to Canada and they want to provide low cost services. It is not necessarily viable for them to build that infrastructure. It is hugely expensive, and Canada is a very, very big country geographically. So it requires a lot of physical material to do so.
Right.
And our current government regulations don't allow for those smaller companies to provide the services by using another network's infrastructure like Rogers.
Got it. Okay, so it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's a little more
Exactly.
nuanced than than maybe what we see on Twitter. I want to get into what some of the implications of lack of competition are. You've mentioned price. I want to talk to you about service when we return from the break.